Elevator maintenance folks, what is the weirdest thing you have found at the bottom of the elevator chamber? I work full-time maintenance at a university that has many elevators throughout the various buildings. In the 6 years I have been at the school, I have checked elevator shafts and found many things, but most interesting part to me is that people will drop their stuff down there and just abandon it. Entire wallets, more cell phones than you might think, cash, books, etc. I can't recall any one particular item standing out, but they can't all have been dropped unknowingly, which means there are people who just consider it gone forever. My department will get calls to stop an elevator to retrieve an item, and it really isn't a big deal, but without fail there will be other equally important items with a layer of dust on it in the pit also. Campus PD does their best to get that stuff back to the owner, but inevitably some goes into lost, found, never to be claimed. I have a friend on the force who has confirmed to me that many things are never claimed. The first thing that comes to mind is a recent discovery of a colony of humans living in the shafts and elevator machinery at the bottom of buildings. This was an extraordinary find for sociologists and anthropologists, revealing more about human culture than had ever been possible before. The discovery was made when an elevator repair worker at a building in Washington, D.C. tripped over a shoe that had fallen between the walls of the shaft. The emergency stop button was pressed, and the broken machinery triggered a shutdown across all elevators within 2 city blocks, trapping hundreds of people for hours. In the investigation that followed, it was found that hundreds of people had been living in the elevator shafts and maintenance tunnels for over a decade, making homes out of discarded machinery. As it turns out, the people who lived in these shafts and tunnels were homeless. Many of them had been living on the streets for decades, surviving by scavenging from dumpsters and sleeping under bridges. When the construction of the housing bubble began, these homeless people were forced out to make way for new buildings. But since they had nowhere else to go, and so many of them were desperate for shelter, they found a place in the elevator machinery. I have seen footage of the shafts where they lived, and it is truly an extraordinary sight. I had no idea that humans could be so resourceful. My dad was an elevator mechanic for about 15 years. He had a very dark sense of humor and would come home with some of the craziest stories. For example, anytime he was in an elevator, he would shake it a little or tap on the displays or buttons and go, "Yep. Total piece of crap. Inferior piece of crap," and I think he mostly did it to freak people out. One of my favorites. He got a call that someone was hearing weird noises from the elevator. He got inside, rode the elevator up, and sure enough, he could hear it too. For half a second he thought it was a baby crying and realized it was a cat. When he got to a certain floor, he could hear this sad meowing. It obviously wasn't in the elevator car, so he got into the shaft and found this little orange kitty. It had somehow, and I don't think he figured out or told us how, got into the elevator shaft and was sitting in a spot between the floors where it wouldn't get crushed by the elevator, but it couldn't get out. My dad saved it and gave it to the building manager to see if it belonged to anyone in the building. It was the one time he ever told us a story that involved him saving an animal instead of finding dead ones. I had to clean some bad isolation at the top of the elevator chamber. So the maintenance guy bring the elevator with the top at the 2nd floor, and we go on top to drive to the top. On the elevator cabin were a few pairs of women underwear and used condoms. So someone was having sex on the top of the elevator. How they got there was a mystery, because it was a very modern one, and you need a special key to open the control box to access the top of the elevator. I'm not an elevator maintenance person, but I have been in dozens of elevator shafts for work. I'm a bomb tech, and when I was in the army I did a lot of Potter/VIP missions in conjunction with the Secret Service. They don't have a bomb squad, so they steal us. It's a great gig. You get to travel all over and stay in some insanely nice hotels. Anyway, the elevator shafts must be cleared to ensure that there aren't any explosive devices. Basically, any place that Potter or the VIP will go needs to be checked out. I've done a fair amount of elevator surfing, which is riding on top of the car. The weirdest and funniest thing I've seen was a 12-inch, around that height, Superman figurine that had its feet glued to the top of the elevator. The head was slightly tilted back, and the arms were pointed upwards, so it appeared like Superman was flying up. up, and away whenever the elevator was in use. I have a picture of it saved on an external hard drive somewhere. That mess was hilarious. The company where I worked had an old heavy-duty freight elevator that was semi-abandoned. It was more like an automotive lift with giant pistons embedded in the ground, but installed in an elevator shaft. When they needed to move something huge, they would fill the hydraulics with oil. It took hundreds of gallons to top off the system, including the giant pistons, and then they would use it for a day. A few months later they would try to use it again, and find the oil gone. Once, they planned to use it the following day, so maintenance pumped in the oil to get ready. The next day, no oil. They refilled it the morning of the move, and got one lift out of it before it stopped. The company knew it was spilling hydraulic oil into the ground under the plant and just did not give mess. They finally abandoned it for good when the maintenance guys threatened to report the illegal oil dumping. Keys. Trash. Bugs if the building is exceptionally messy. Mostly dirt and dust. Found a paint roller that the last guy left there once. It was stuck to the floor. Not a whole lot of weird stuff can make it between the sill and the landing. This question should be my jam, but unfortunately I've never found anything interesting. $2 coin once, a dime bag of some unknown drug, plenty of syringes, or sets of keys. It's mostly just people's junk mail and empty chip bags down there. Worked security in a large department store. We routinely had to pop it open to retrieve dropped keys, wallets, and phones. Recovered a $2,500 gold necklace covered in poop. A would-be shoplifter darted out of our jewelry department and suitcased the necklace while in the elevator. When he realized we were waiting for him at the exit level, he went back up a floor, removed it, and dropped it down the shaft. We arrested him anyway, much to his surprise. Not a technician, but do work at a large hotel. A few years ago one of our elevators stopped working. Turned out when they opened it up, they found a 3-foot pile of guest folios that were never delivered to the rooms. Later when we looked on the camera we found it was a security guard that got tired of delivering them to the rooms and instead dropped them down the elevator shaft. He did this for months until he was caught. Been in the game 12 years now. Found a full Christmas tree last month. Other finds $5k and £20 notes, big ass bag of drugs. Roughly 5 kg brand new shoes by the boxload. Severed finger. So backstory. Christmas tree was found this year on a council estate in August. Photos was taken for the officers. It was rather amusing. I visit this lift every month. The money and drugs was found in the same lift shift around 3 months apart 7 years ago. The money was spilt between me and my engineer, as I was her apprentice at the time. The drugs we handed into security. The shoes was found on a passenger/staff lift out the back of JD Sports. Suspect, a staff member, was sticking them down there and loading into a car at the end of his shift. Police was involved in this one. The finger was found in a very expensive apartment building. We talking 50 floors and £1 million plus apartments. Again, police and EMG services involved in this one. There are at least 6 people who saw a purple dildo and everyone left it there. Either all have seen the same purple dildo or purple dildos are more a common sight at the bottom of the elevator shaft. Absolutely sure everyone is telling the truth. Not an elevator repair person, but you would be shocked by the number of nurses that drop their keys down the shaft. 20 stories up and 2 buildings away from the parking garage, and they already had their keys in their hand. I had to call maintenance all the time for retrieval. Worked at a hotel. Guest dropped their phone down the shaft. After a few failed retrieval efforts, we called the elevator guys. They went down, got the phone, and also found a carton of eggs. Rotten, but not cracked. I don't even understand how that could happen accidentally. One time, we were doing a rip out at an old factory. They were gutting them and turning them into luxury apartments. The elevator we were taking out was a messy old freight that hadn't run in years. When we finally ran it up, we went down to inspect the pit. It smelled like a dead body had chilled there for half a century. The bottom floor wasn't lit, so I shined my flashlight under the elevator and the whole floor started moving. Roaches. Nasty. Haven't really found anything fun though. I've cleaned out more pits than I could count to. I gave my mom a cheap ring I found. Found a pair of underwear at a hotel. Found a full packet at a courthouse of some lady's case transcribed. Oh, I was on a mod once, and one of the hoistway doors had an advertisement sticker for a tennis restringing service. Which was weird, because it was somewhere only an elevator guy should be able to reach. I called the number, but it was out of service. I found some cool graffiti from the 40s. That's about it. I worked on escalators for a year and a half. There was a lot more in those pits. I was taking home bent up quarters every day. There was lots of shoe bits, and I was always nervous of coming across used needles in certain units. Obligatory wasn't an elevator tech but hotel maintenance. Guest reports waterfall sounds in elevator shaft en route to the lobby. Investigation ensues. Some pump at bottom of shaft is running constantly. Water is still coming out of the drain it's connected to after I unplug it. Find out from notes of third shift maintenance that multiple first floor rooms had repeated clogged toilets all night long. Plumber called. 6-inch sewer drain for the entire building is clogged. Worst clog I've seen in 15 years. Washcloths and TP. Over 7 inches of clog in the pipe. Apparently it was clogged so bad that it was backing up into the laundry room, the drain for the elevator shaft and the rooms closest to the main pipe out of the building. First floor suites. Solid turds were left at the bottom of that shaft. I quit about a week later for unrelated circumstances. Our team dropped a steel anal dilator down the dumbwaiter to shaft by mistake. When the technician came down and grabbed it off the floor, I'll never forget the look on his face when I told him, "We need that up here, it's got to go in someone's ass soon." It was priceless. I'm a technician for a hospital, dealing with rectal surgical tools is very normal. At a place where my wife used to work, a body. There was a crash from the elevator area. The boss went to see what it was, came back white as a sheet, and said do not go out there. 2 maintenance guys had been working on the elevator. One was in the bottom of the shaft, and the other one made one small error. But I'm guessing the single most unusual item ever found at the bottom of an elevator shaft was a Wright R2600 aircraft engine on July 28, 1945 in the Empire State Building. I used to work at an old 22-story building that had the first automated elevator system in our state. The idea was, in order to control the flow of people in the lobby, you'd push the button for your floor and the elevator would tell you which one to get on. The elevators would make sure the crowd spread out over the big lobby. Anyway, it was the first time I'd ever seen the auto open eyes used too. I worked on the executive floor, where long-winded executives would often stop me as I was leaving. I got used to passing my hand through the doors to break the eye and hold the doors open. You guessed it, my left hand didn't trip the eye. The doors closed on my hand, which was prevented from closing completely because of my heavy engagement and wedding rings. Crushed the whole mess and lost a 2-carat diamond 22 stories below. My hand was only bruised, thank goodness for a safety shut off. I like to think that someday, someone will find the tiny treasure.